right, it is 7 o'clock on the nose, and I'm going to call to order this regular business meeting of the Newmarket School Board, and I'd like you all to join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Perfect, thank you. I will, at this point, open the floor to public comment. If anyone would like to say anything. We have some visitors this evening for specific agenda items, so I don't see anyone leaping to the mic, so we will close non-public comment. And as we have some visitors tonight for specific agenda items, I'd like to sort of move some things around with the board's permission. We have 2 teachers from the elementary school to talk about a job share, an 8th grade field trip, and the signage for the junior senior high school. Can we move those items ahead in the agenda with that? Is that amenable to everyone? All right, then we'll begin with the job share. If the people from the job share would like to come to the mic and make their presentation. We received your letter in our packet detailing what you all would like to do.
Yeah, Cassandra or June, if you want to go ahead.
Okay. Well, we're intending to come tonight and answer any questions that you might have as far as what the job share would look like and how it might benefit our children.
That was, one of my main questions was, the impact on children and the benefits. And if you guys could speak about that, that would be great.
Well, I think we could take a step back and also talk about the history of job share in Newmarket. It hasn't been done at the elementary school in a while, but Cassandra and I both have done the job share model at the elementary school. I did it for 7 years after working full-time, then did it for 7 years and then went back full-time.
I did it for my first 3 years in Newmarket, some 32 years ago. I did it in a 2nd grade for 3 years.
And it was done also at Nancy Miller and Lily Kashari Spinoza also did it in the PE, in the physical education department. I know it's being done to some degree or part-time up at the high school right now. I know Pam Caswell has been doing a type of model and John Otash as well. The benefits that we've seen, we did it a little bit differently in terms of the time split, but some of the things that Cassandra and I first of all have been teaching together 4th grade for decades now, and we have shared our students by switching for different curriculums such as science and social studies, and Cassandra is as you might know, is retiring this year. And so this has been something that, we've been mulling over. I'm still, Cassandra, is retiring. I'm still have children to put through college. And even though this is going into my 31st year, would be next year, I did start here. I did my Ed 500 here out of UNH. I did 2 years of being an aide, so this is actually going to be my 34th year here, and did my internship here, and so we feel like we really know the 4th grade curriculum through and through. Cassandra's been anchoring social studies and mentoring new teachers as they've been coming in to our grade level. I myself and Melinda Lapoli have been more the science people. And so one of the things that we thought of in terms of this model was to have Cassandra continue.
And I would focus on my full day, let's say if it was Monday, and then part of 2 to 3 hours on Tuesday, that I would focus teaching all areas of the curriculum, social studies through all areas of the curriculum. And in that sense, I can keep the social studies driven. There's no written curriculum for 4th grade social studies, but I have my own, and I've passed it on to other 4th grade teachers that have come in. But I have a passion for social studies, and I also was excited to think about this opportunity because I honestly don't want to leave education at this point. I do want to retire and spend more time with my family, and it's been a number of years, but I also don't want to leave the school community or leave teaching itself. And when this sort of came up, it seemed like the right opportunity for June, and certainly a great opportunity for me. That's one of the reasons why we pursued it. But in getting back to your question about the advantages for children, we've always looked at, we teach a lot alike. We wouldn't have done as many sharing of the math and social studies that we have if we weren't similar in our approaches to that teaching of the curriculum. We're also very similar in the way, the expectations we have of children, and the expectations of ourselves in what we present to the children. So I honestly don't have any misgivings about what it would look like in a classroom that we shared. And it's also, I've always felt that some children relate to one teacher, and other children might relate to another. And so we have two experienced heads looking at the child instead of just one. And we would make ourselves available to parents for any parent conferences that are the scheduled conference, any other times the parents would like to meet, we'd make ourselves available for that. And we'd also work together the first week of school to set up classroom expectations.
Community, behavior, that type of thing. One of the things that we both saw that when we were time sharing, not together, but in our past experiences were, I time shared with Marie Richards at the time, and it was, if I had a sick person at home, or if I was sick or vice versa, we were covering for each other. So there was really never, I would say almost never, were there true substitutes with the children. It was always a face that they knew, which also has happened for me a couple of years ago. Ann Keefe left after decades of being here, and I had done a lot of working. We had shared our classrooms together, and she came back a little bit different than what Cassandra and I are proposing, but she came back for a couple of years after retiring and was volunteering in my classroom and teaching social studies, and I wasn't putting my feet up, but it was just nice to have another adult in the room, and the kids really enjoyed it. And she was also doing a lot of, when I couldn't be there, she was offering to be that substitute in the classroom, which was seamless because the children knew her, like I said, so not just another substitute in the class. So we're committed to try and doing that type of thing too.
To fill in for each other so that the need for subs would be a lot less, which is very difficult at this particular time.
And I would say, I think we've been, in the last 5 years, we've been doing math groups too, with Linda Saliga, who's the math tutor at our school in the third, fourth, and fifth grade. And so we've been teaching math together and doing heterogeneous math groups, which has been, I think, truly beneficial for the kids. So we're going to try and figure out how that could work out too, to continue to do that. So we have, a lot of ideas. It's progressive, but it's been done before. And social studies is a subject that can go cross-curricular, and you can do writing and reading and graphing and math, and so it could be something that could go throughout the entire day, so to speak, and then and the fact that I know the social studies curriculum and have been doing it since Mrs. Keefe left is I can then continue whatever Cassandra doesn't get done during the week, and it's not like it would be new territory for me. I've done it before, and I'm doing it now. So.
I think it's kind of an exciting opportunity, because I do like the idea that we always try to, a lot of times, subject areas get taught in isolation. I think this is an opportunity for Cassandra to kind of hone her social studies skills and look at how can I integrate this into a unit on graphing for mathematics, or we're talking about the Industrial Revolution or in New Hampshire, how can that tie into some simple machines and scientific studies that are taking place there? So I think that having that person be able to do that and then be able to disseminate those kind of units of studies or have those conversations with the other teachers at the grade level or even the grade levels up and down from fourth grade, I think that presents a great opportunity as well.
Yeah,
So
I'm really, really excited with the whole challenge of, especially the math unit, bringing math into, and I know our math curriculum so well that it will really be very fun for me to do a lot of word problems through the study of social studies with math, which is something they desperately need. So that's.
Any questions from anyone else? Ingrid, I think you have one.
Yeah, I do have a question. What's your plan for the time split on it? I'm used to a high school model where it's really easy. It's like, okay, the day is 6 periods, somebody's teaching 3 periods, somebody's teaching 4 periods, whatever it is, and it's an easy breakout. But what's your vision of the time split?
First, we were thinking, 4 days, 1 day, and we sat down and we were like, one of the biggest things that came to mind was the continuity and the overlap, because when we were doing it, it was more of like a 50-50 type of a situation back in the day. In all honesty, financially, I'm not in that won't work for me to do a 50-50 split right now. I'll be completely honest. So we thought about how can we make this where we also, can have time where the kids see us together and where we're not just planning via email and text. And so that means that, Cassandra would go for that extra into the next day so that there would be time in that day, the next following day, that she would be there. I would be there. And
For the extra
so a 25-75 split.
So it'd be 3 3/4 days and 1 1/4 days is the way they're.
Yeah.
framing
So
it.
I would work all day Monday, come in Tuesday morning, and teach the first period, and then hopefully our special would be the same time, 9:30 to 10:30. We'd have time to sit down together and do any co-planning that we needed to do for the week.
Meredith, would that impact our current definition of part-time
In what way?
in terms of benefits, for example?
Benefits are prorated for the contract for people who work more than 40% of their teaching
So nothing.
time.
Nothing.
Well, I mean, it would mean a reduction for, one
It'll mean
person
a-
would be retired and no longer eligible for
No, no,
the
no,
benefits, and
right.
the other would receive a prorated reduction.
Gotcha. Okay. And so, take medical insurance for example. So her medical insurance,
Would be prorated down to
Prorated
75% of whatever rate applies to teachers at that time.
And I haven't taken, it's not to say that I would never,
Yep.
but I haven't taken the school insurance in over a decade or
yeah,
more.
okay, I was just.
Right. Yeah.
My question, and I definitely like that you guys have planned it out so well and thought about it thoroughly. My only concern would be, and Meredith, this is something to you and Sean, in terms of sort of setting a precedent moving forward and the impact that might have on the district if we make this. Is there anything that way?
It's not precedent setting, it's at the discretion of the board, so I don't
Okay.
think that's a
And I
concern
think in
for
one
you.
of the articles that I think we might have attached, it did touch lightly on that, and it said it's not something that, you want to see 100%
Right.
throughout your,
Right.
your school. And I know that even, when I was doing the 50-50 timeshare years ago, and Meredith and Sean and Cassandra and I even talked about this, just like with the 1-2 situations, and there are different models, and different models fit different kids. And, maybe that's something, that we need to look at if this were to pass and go forward. It isn't necessarily for every child, but I will say that in my years of experience, Cassandra, we've talked about kids are pretty resilient and they do seem to, they are more flexible than we give them credit for at times.
We share children now, like
Right.
with our math groups, and I have taught Melinda Lepoli's children social studies for 15 years, and she's taught my children science. So I already know her whole class, and even in that situation, and with your children for math, we can kind of collaborate. If we know this child, if both of us know them so well, then we can talk about it and kind of brainstorm on how problems can be solved, and that's been the benefit I've seen with sharing children. So.
Any other questions from anyone?
It's just a comment. I just think having two different teaching styles, even though you're similar, they're still two different people. They're fourth graders. They're a year, 2 years away from sixth grade.
Right.
But they're going to have different teachers. It's really a good stepping stone. And it will be interesting. It does open the door for other people, other parents that might want to be part-time 75, 50-50. I remember the 50-50 in the high school. Didn't phase my kids. They were fine. So, if we're looking for a vote.
And I will say, in terms of when it was 50-50, it was never really 50-50. I remember my husband saying, why don't you go back full-time and, let's have the money?
Yeah.
Because you're thinking about it, you're worrying about it, you're whatever. And, and I kind of foresee it's going to be a little bit of that, as well. It's always more than what you do, but it's also, because teaching, unlike other professions, is there's not a lot of flexibility to your schedule. So, one of the things I liked about doing the part-time years ago was having that flexibility, even if it meant I did have to put in a little bit more than the 50% time.
Hearing no other questions, I seek a motion to approve this job share for the 2019-2020 school year.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion from Mr. Kennison and a second from Ms. McKinney to approve this job share. Any further discussion? Al, you seem to have a question.
Yeah, I'd like to have some further discussion about it, because I think, first of all, it sounds to me like it's a good opportunity to get, I guess I don't hear anything to the contrary from you folks. So far be it for me to judge that. However, I think if we approve this without further discussion, while we may not be setting a precedent, we certainly establish an openness to other employees within the school district to have job sharing. And I think that's a pretty big discussion to have based on just this one example.
So we've had it. We've been doing it. We voted on it 3 years ago, and we did it.
I wasn't here 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So don't look at me.
Where do you do job sharing?
In the science department in high school. I can't say her name, but it was the first time she came back from maternity leave part-time and shared the job with somebody.
That's I'm sorry. That's usually where you see a lot of job sharing occurring is when somebody's coming back from maternity leave. You perhaps have two teachers that they're both coming back from maternity leave and they want to split a time. So that's the more common occurrence that you'll see that. This is a little bit.
Didn't Yankees do it too for a while? Wasn't she part-time for a while?
No.
After she was sick?
No, but it occurred, Pat Gardner
Okay.
did it before she was an ESOL teacher. Mary Stone.
I done it with Mary
And
Stone.
Mary
Yeah.
Stone did it with numerous people. She was actually the first person to
Yeah.
actually do it with different people.
Uh-huh.
And then then I did it with Marie Richards, and then like I said, Lily, gym teacher, and that's how we ended up getting Nancy Miller.
Yeah.
As
And
a
I
gym
guess
teacher.
the person to talk to would be Sean, and if you'd want to discuss it further and talk to administration about it.
Well, yeah, I think what I'd like, and maybe Bill and I'd like to see a policy in Judge. Who do we give it to? What are the restrictions? Can it be 90-10? So I'd like to put some thought into a policy that says, yeah, we as a school district enjoy this.
Do we
Sure.
have one?
Mhm.
And we have it in our packet this week?
Well, in that section, I would have to.
So the question, we have a motion on the floor to vote
the
on
re-
something.
And
There's-
the request to table
The
it,
request to
sounds
table
like.
it is out there. So is that what the board would like to do, collectively table them for further information?
Let me add, if there's already a policy that's already written, and I don't wanna hold things
I don't
up
have the
because I
whole
didn't read the policy.
Group with me.
Or is that just part-time substitute? No, that's not the one.
Can I ask a practical question?
Yes, Mike?
Is there any time frame here, within reason, obviously, on a decision, does it need to be tonight? Does it need to be within a month or 2 weeks or whatever?
Meredith?
It doesn't need to be tonight, but I think sooner rather than later for the benefit of
Yeah,
planning
for
and.
matter of planning, yeah.
Would it be amenable to the board to research this further and revisit it again at the workshop on the 21st? Reviewing any policy, getting input from Meredith and Sean to revisit it on the 21st, would that work?
Yes.
Okay, so we will table the motion that was brought forth by Mr. Kennison and readdress this issue at the, on March 21st at the workshop. And
We're gonna find out policy.
policy input from administration.
I mean, that's public conversation, so I would say, Sean, it wouldn't be here if Sean didn't support
Right.
this recommendation.
And I assume this recommendation is being made on behalf of all students.
I'm sorry.
No, because it's case by
Just
case.
specific.
This isn't setting precedent. This is a case-by-case decision which the board reserves the right to make. And so that, this recommendation, this principal supports. There could be another recommendation that comes forward that he might not support, that has a different configuration, or a similar configuration that doesn't meet the principal's approval.
I understand that. On the other hand, if we, well, let's go with the policy.
Why don't we look at the policy, and why don't we, as board members, if there are specific questions that we have, submit them to me, we will get them to Sean and Meredith so they can be addressed at the 21st in the public forum at that time. Does that make sense? Okay. So
And would
we
you
will-
like us back on that night?
Probably, I don't know.
If you want, but you don't have
We'll see what happens
Okay.
question-wise.
to. We love company.
Okay.
And
All right,
We'll see what happens question-wise and
If we
what
can be
input.
first on the agenda.
You would be.
Thank you for tonight.
Okay.
And I just wanted to add one other thing too, is that, it's been out there and it's been done, time sharing, job sharing
Right.
has been done. But it's certainly not for everyone. And this just happened to be the right opportunity for us in the right ratio of days. But there aren't a lot of people that
Right.
can afford, honestly, to work half a
Right.
week. So I'm not sure how.
One of the benefits that we have in our district is longevity, and you two are both excellent examples of that. So thank you for what you do every day.
Thank you. Thank you.
More
I
than
love the work.
100% of the time in your classrooms today. We appreciate it very much.
Oh, thank you.
And I hope, by the way, my comments are not negative towards.
No, I understand.
They're not at all.
Oh, no, yeah.
You're the pros that know how best to teach kids. It's just, I'm kind of a stickler for policy. That's all.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you guys very
Thank
much.
you. Thanks.
The next item on the agenda is, the modified agenda is the 8th grade class trip. So if you ladies would like to come and talk about that.
Hello.
Hello, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having us. So we're just here tonight to seek the board's approval for the overnight 8th grade field trip this year. We're headed back to Hidden Valley. We had an absolute blast last year. So the goals of the trip, all the curriculum, we're not going towards until the end of the year. The dates will be May 29th, which is a Wednesday, to Friday the 31st. And the goals this year are really to get the kids involved in a sense of community and putting what they learned in the classroom to use outside in the real world, and team building and getting to know themselves, who they are mentally and physically, and building each other up, I guess, for lack of better words. We've done 2 very successful scholarships or fundraisers this year, so scholarships will not be a problem at all to meet. We're hoping that every single student is able to go, and we're here to answer any questions. that you
What is
have
the
for
price
us.
per student?
The price per student is going to be $150. That includes everything: the room, the board, the food, transportation, the tents, the activities, the equipment, everything.
And you said you've had 2 fundraisers to make up for scholarships for
Yep,
students?
we have 2, and then we just got news of a third from a parent that's in the works. We raised thousands of dollars in the first 2, so like I said, scholarships will more than have met.
That's so
Yeah.
everybody gets to go.
Yeah, the students and parents and teachers worked really hard fundraising, and it definitely paid off.
Can you guys introduce yourselves? I
Sure.
forgot to ask you
I'm so
before.
sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm like, hi guys. So my name's Lindsay Mosbury. I'm the 8th grade science teacher.
And I'm Nicole St. James. I'm teaching 8th grade language arts. It's my first year at Newmarket, and I'm loving it.
Great. Thank you. I apologize for not doing that more appropriately.
That's totally fine. Yeah.
Should know better. I had all my papers, but I'm like, I know all you guys.
Yeah, that's a problem. We know it, not everybody knows.
Any
Yeah.
other questions?
It's the same thing that we've been doing the last 3 years?
So last
last
year was
year.
our first time doing it, and even though it rained the entire 3 days, the kids still talk about it this year and just had an absolute blast. They have new activities this year. We just met with Ian, who is planning everything with us. There's going to be rock climbing, there's a ropes course, there's tons of water activities, and they do a really nice job giving every student options. So if somebody doesn't necessarily want to jump off the water iceberg, they can kayak, or they can go for a hike, or they can do arts and crafts. Or so there's the reason why it worked so well last year is there was always something to do. The kids were always busy. The parents were like, yay, we have them so tired after they came back. So there's always something to do, and it really does fit the needs of every single student, which is really nice. It was really a great experience last year.
Excellent.
Intense, how many nights?
2 nights.
But you sleep in tents as well.
Oh
Yeah.
yes, we're right there with them. But it's a really nice sense of community. The kids said, like right before bed, we have like fires at the campsite, and they said that was one of their favorite parts. So yeah, it was really great.
I seek a motion to approve this field trip.
So moved.
We have a motion from Mr. Zink and a second from Ms. Alberg to approve this field trip. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Field trip approved. Thank you for
Thank
coming.
you. Thank
Please
you.
let
We
us know how it
appreciate it.
goes this
Thank
year.
you.
Yeah,
And
lots of
welcome
pictures.
to Newmarket. Perfect. Thank you. The next thing is we're revisiting the junior high sign that senior high sign that we did last time. Greg provided us with an image for putting it on the opposite side, on the parking lot side of the street.
Yes.
And Greg,
And I can't
will-
take credit for making that, and I have to give credit where credit's due. And Michelle in my office actually made the thing. Graphic artist work for me is not what you'd call my best use.
I had it a second ago, and now I can't. Here it is. No.
I got it.
Here. Okay. Yes. And Greg, also the electrical projections too.
Yes.
Go ahead and proceed if you'd like to present this stuff to us. Or do you have any? Do you want to take questions? How would you like to do it?
What I can say is we've looked at basically 3 different options, putting it where it was originally designed, putting it on the east side on the school side, and then of course the side here in a grassy area. So what I've provided you is basically images to show those, as well as some cost estimates for the electrical for all 3. And you can see they're varying prices depending on what we have to do.
Ingrid, do you want to pass these down to Al so we can see? No, did you find your stuff? Oh, you got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Take a look, Ingrid. Okay. Any questions about any of that stuff?
Well, to me, you can see right here where you can't see the other side of the exit Right, this is what we talked about when you,
Yeah, right. You
coming
can't-
down,
You can't see them coming out of this,
even though people aren't supposed to be using that, it's
I
used
mean,
all the
it's
time.
kind of, it's a little bit maybe, tough to see from this angle because you're not gonna be driving down the grass and you won't be 3 feet in front of the sun. But,
Yeah, so you're saying you could see it.
I think this gives this one gives you
Yeah.
a better view.
sure.
right. And my concern was that at a distance out, if you were farther back,
Yeah, like for this year.
if you're looking at this one, but I drive it,
Yeah,
because I
yeah.
live on the other. If we're farther back, the students' heads might not show above that, and we're in that right lane, and this is on the right side.
Yep. Yep,
No, I mean,
Remembering that student parking is gonna be on the school side and student drop off and pickup is gonna be
So
on
we'll
the
have
school
that much
side
foot
moving
traffic.
forward.
Yeah.
You'll still have walkers and you'll still have.
And to help you out, that
event
sign
travel,
where,
but
if you
it's
look where
different than
originally
current.
was supposed to be placed, it's 10 feet in from the sidewalk. So you actually have a 10-foot area that's all clear before,
Yeah,
it's
for
clear
setback
sight
reasons, it
right
has to
down
be
to
10
that,
feet in
to
from-
that sign.
I mean,
The
that's
state
why I asked
road.
that, because I figured DOT has all the.
Yeah, I have to
all
keep,
the-
I have to keep 10 feet off.
So great, say that again, if it's on the, west side of the street.
Actually, any of these options have to be 10 feet off of the roadway,
And sidewalk.
or in the DOT area. So if you can envision the 10-foot piece, you can see the students that are standing at the sign or the crosswalk from any of these options on that side of the school, because you do have a 10-foot area. So which is, if you want to kind of picture it, it's about halfway through the sidewalk that you have now, or the new sidewalk we have that goes through the crosswalk. So it's not, there's a big gap there.
My concern was that if they aren't standing there, they're just walking and they're busy chatting and they don't stop there and look both ways and just walk into the street, is somebody going to have seen them enough in advance to stop? That was my.
I think that's going to happen no matter what we do, where we put it.
Yeah.
To be honest with you,
Talk to your kid when they're little and say,
yeah,
stop, look and listen.
but
Like, you have a good point though, Meredith, like, you know, we keep thinking that this is gonna be, continue to be used the way it's being
But it's
used.
not.
Yeah, it's not.
We're not gonna have that much.
That was a good reminder that there's an end in sight.
Or you might, for events and to, to mention that,
Right.
you'll still have events where kids might walk over it. Yeah.
And adults, I mean,
And
how many
adults,
adults that
sure.
I yell at that don't hit the button?
that does happen.
Yeah.
So in terms of the costing, Greg, I think
Yeah.
the existing plan is a little over 1,500.
yeah, and that's basically to set the disconnect, do the power wiring for it, and put in the flagpole lighting. The other two options do not have flagpole lighting costs in them because the flagpole is already installed. So we still would probably at some point want to put in a more permanent. I put a temporary solar light in to light the flag. We don't have a permanent lights out there at this point, or I should say.
But
we-
you digress.
Yes. So we still have some things.
All right, so, I mean, I feel better seeing it now on this side.
And I think that there's a couple things. The 10-foot thing is a good thing too, because it's just that's a good reminder to have as well, because there is that space of 10 feet, which you can see a good amount of persons.
I also should note that the option across the street won't be installed until next year. I can't do it until the construction project is
Right.
over.
Well, I mean, that's not,
Were we gonna put with the other ones? We're gonna have them soon?
Yeah, actually, I can put the other ones in now if I
Oh,
wanted
yeah, I
to.
guess it's done. That part.
But more likely towards the end of the school year,
Yeah.
because of the transitions that are happening right now. We have
Oh,
people
that
coming and going
downsizing.
every day. Well, that as well.
Yeah, it won't be done while school's in session, yes.
Any thoughts about this? Because I think we need to move to trying to make a decision if we can about this.
how does it,
The other thing, and I don't know if this really plays in, but I think this year the canopy will be built over the entrance.
Correct.
Of the school, so when you're shortening your visible distance by that amount as well. It's just tough for me to get a feel from it from
Canopies on the school side of that drop-off loop, right?
What I'm
So
saying
then we're
here is-
talking,
What I'm saying is just like, if the sign's here on the school side and you have a canopy, it's just
the canopy's on the other side of the bus loop, though. That's what I'm trying to,
on the-
on the
It's
school side
attached
of
to
the
the
bus
physical
loop.
building.
Yeah, no, sure. It's
It
attached.
doesn't come across the bus.
It does not come across there. Matter of fact, if you look out there right now, you can see where the wooden enclosures are. That's where your canopy is.
Yeah, so, what I'm getting at is that, people would be coming out of the canopy, walking towards the crosswalk on that, I guess, the west side of the bus loop.
But it's really down the center of the bus loop,
Okay.
because right now your main entrance is getting the canopy. So the kids would come, again, kids won't be parking across there, but they'll come out of there, they're gonna walk across the bus loop area to the crosswalk, then walk through the crosswalk to where the crosswalk sign
Here's
is.
the simple point I'm trying to make. As it stands, when kids come out of the school, or anybody comes out of the school, you can see them immediately out of those doors. Just saying with a canopy up, it delays your site pickup by that amount of the canopy, by the,
Will it be lit up? Will the canopy be lit? Because it's almost like a.
Oh, of course, it'll be lit up, but I'm just thinking it through here, this isn't,
I can't think of it.
dispositive necessarily, but I'm just saying that it's, the canopy adds a little distance where you're not seeing somebody, heading towards that crosswalk. Not sure is it, again, it's just tough to get a feel from scale from photos, but I just think it's worth mentioning.
Now, Mike, with that thought in mind, with the canopy piece, is your thought then the parking lot side is the better side to avoid the canopy coming from both sides? Or do you not know?
Well, it's I'm sorry, it's somewhat circular, Kim, because I don't really know how much of a practical effect the canopy will have.
Okay.
So the whole reason why I brought this issue up in the first place is just, and I think we've driven through there many times, is just,
Safety.
yes, just picking people up. And again, it's,
Like you can kind of see, if you envision, so it's, how wide is the canopy gonna be? 15 feet?
It's the
The
width of the
canopy's gonna be
entrance.
width of the entrance,
Yeah.
which is
So with.
probably close to 18 to 20 feet, yeah.
so it'll be sticking out from the building that much.
No, it'll be sticking out, it stops at the sidewalk.
Right.
Doesn't go, the sidewalk is still,
And it's open on the sides. 'cause
you
there's
have a
bench
5-foot
seating.
sidewalk there, and then you've got the curb that drops down to where the buses are, and then you cross that to the
Grass walkway.
the walkway through the grassed area to the crosswalk.
So what's the width, in other words?
You mean the depth to the building?
That's
Sure.
the-
It's gonna be, without measuring it, it's gonna be in that probably 20-foot range also. So it's, I'm just trying to think, I'm trying to picture it in my head right now. It's gonna come out,
I don't think it's quite that much. but I
well,
don't have
we
the
used,
drawing.
No, I think
we
it's-
used 2 sheets of plywood to build the little thing, so that's 16 feet. Then we had a gap of about 2 feet, and then we had the other seating area. So it's gonna be right around that 20-ish area coming out.
Has this been run by DOT? Because I would say they're the experts on the distances and the road speeds and the speed limits and the stop time and stuff like that, or?
Kind of opens Pandora's box.
There was a discussion with the DOT. If it's off of their right of way, it's not their concern.
Yeah, we confirmed that with them for exactly that reason.
So I guess the question is, how do we best proceed from here?
I mean,
I was hoping they'd have some safety guidance for us.
It's not in their purview.
have we, can I ask you this, have we consulted at all with, police?
Yes, the school resource officer was part of the discussions.
What did he say, do you remember?
Greg told us this last time, but I'll let him reiterate
Say it
it.
again. Say it again.
He did have some concerns about visual keying up with the sign where it was originally designed. Felt it would be better on the opposite side or the east side of that grassed area.
On the school side, but east.
Yes, yep,
Meaning towards
Towards
town.
town?
towards town,
Past the crosswalk.
past the crosswalk. So basically, you see the crosswalk's visual, then you have the sign.
That's true.
Kind of, if you think about it, remember the old pine trees we had there that we took all down? Kind of in that area.
Yeah, out of the three options, was he presented with a possibility of having it on the opposite side?
Did not discuss that piece with him, no. Because it wasn't an option when we had those discussions.
Sure. Can we circle back on that issue with,
And I do want to note one thing, I think it's important, if we put it on the east side, you are removing your brand-new sidewalk, and you're going to be patching it.
Oh,
That's why it's
So that-
$2,410.
That's right, because we have to saw cut that all out, and since that's a pathway, we have some special requirements for the conduit runs. So you will have a seam in your new sidewalk.
so I guess there's some more additional feedback that the board needs to make a decision on this, I'm hearing. So,
I think that would be wise, and I would also recommend that you pass it by, it's ultimately our decision, it's not the state's decision, it's not the police department's decision, it's not public works decision, but, it never hurts to sort of get a little input, and so I'm wondering too, if it might make sense to have you run it by the public works director to see, there may be things that we're not even thinking about, there, so at least it can't hurt if we're asking the SRO that as well.
And we'll ask them.
Yeah.
I do know when we talked to code enforcement, they were not going to be involved in it, so, because
They what?
they're not going to be involved in it because it's outside of our ordinances.
My 2 cents were,
We can do any of them, so it,
the thought of driving down the road, particularly to unfamiliar people, if they have the sign on the opposite side of the street, is to identify that that's part of our campus as well. And I think that's really important, because you feel like you're going through the middle of the campus. If you've got everything on the school side, you're not gonna be paying attention to the other side at all.
That's a good
And
point.
I think that's a
No,
huge
It's a
issue.
fair point. Yep.
It really,
Yeah.
it's just obvious to me where it belongs. That's just.
Yeah, when you drive through Cole Brown over there, it's very clear that you've got two parts
We
of
do.
the school campus.
It's going, you're going
And
through the
way ours
campus,
is set
not
up, it's
front of
not
it.
quite.
I think Cole Brown's on their school
I was
side.
gonna say.
It is on the
Cole
school
Brown-
side.
What I'm saying
The
is,
original
when you
school
drive
side.
through there, it's
Yeah,
very
not
clear
parking.
that that's a school on the right side and that's a school on the left side. Whereas ours
I
is
see.
a parking lot.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
With what looks like an old business building, and anybody who's been here probably still sees that in their head as the insurance building. There's not that, oh, this is now school stuff in their head.
It's
But-
actually really cool.
mm-hmm. Yes, Meredith? Any input from you?
So I missed the part, did the SRO know about across the street? Was
He
that-
did not.
He did not, so you can ask him that as well and.
Yep.
And we'll hopefully run this to ground on the
On the
21st.
And I'll also,
Maybe.
we'll have to reprice it, because if we put it, it's a year later, so they're actually not honoring the price right now, because it's past the cut time, but we'll see we'll have to rebid it out next year.
Okay, thank you, Greg.
You're welcome.
Moving along, or really starting at
Back
the,
to Greg.
oh, yes, Greg, you're back. Is this the,
Yeah.
contract for the buses?
No, this is energy efficiency
Ah,
upgrades,
yes,
which
the
is also.
lights.
I got out of buses when I
The
came here.
lights, the lights. Okay, Greg.
This was in your packet in February. Deferred that at the time. We haven't received any additional questions, but Greg is back tonight to answer any that may have arisen.
Does anyone have any questions for Greg about the energy thing that I can't find right now? Thank you. Now I know what I'm looking for again. I just saw it a second ago. There we go. No.
This is part of the negotiated energy efficient company we've been working with through town and school facilities, the ESCO, correct? So it was originally negotiated out. The lighting package itself, they bid to multiple vendors in their piece because they want to get the least expensive because it has the best return.
I guess, Greg, the first question I would ask is, what's the, if we decide to go ahead with this, what's our, that first year financial obligation?
So it actually, the way it's calculated is the payments, if you finance it, are 100% derived by energy savings. So it would come right out of your current electrical, our current electrical budget.
Our proposed
Our
electrical budget.
our proposed current electric budget because of the energy savings. So what they're doing is they're guaranteeing an annual energy savings of $15,000, which would then cover if we finance it, it covers the payments annually. So there is no additional cost to the district to do it. So in other words, there is no upfront cost other than we just obtain the financing and go through those steps that we'd have to go through. There's a couple, 3 or 4 different ways you can go about it. You can finance this out. For a period of time, you can finance it out and pay it off after the first year and appropriate the balance of the agreement or the leasing in year 2. So in other words, if we put it in now, we'd have our first year energy savings, which would pay that first year's payments. And then in a new budget, if it goes through, you could appropriate paying off that so that year 2 you're not actually paying, that energy savings goes right back into the budget. So that's one way of doing it. And the other way is to just pay for it up front, which is actually the best return because you're not paying any interest at all.
I think of this as like akin to a lease to own. if you will.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you at
Yeah,
all.
I'm thinking of this in terms of a lease, which is typically the more expensive way to do things. So I'm wondering, even if you did a option where you let the first year's savings pay your first payment, what's the price to buy the car at the end is what you really want to know.
So this
Without an
lease is not
additional-
like a lease that you would think like a car. This is, they're called municipal leases, which are basically a regular financing mechanism, not bonds. So it allows us to finance it like you purchased a car, not a lease of a car. So you're paying your interest, principal and interest for the life of the loan. If you pay it off earlier, you have that option. There's no prepayment penalties.
Let's see, that's different than the question I was getting at.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm just worried, not worried, but I want to know what the price would be if we just paid for it.
The price, if we just paid for it right now, is $169,000.
Okay.
This one that says final cost on it.
Yep, but we have projections from Eversource of $40,000. So our actual
Of rebates.
our actual costs for the project with the anticipated rebates would be $129,000.
So we get that rebate no matter what, if we pay it up front or if we
Yep.
finance it.
Yeah, well, the financing, what we would do is we'd finance $129,000. We would not finance the $169,000.
At a rate of 4.4.
Actually, I called today, and the rate that I got quoted today is $399. Again, that's subject to change based on what
So
time
Greg,
I
I
call,
think
I suppose.
the bigger question is what happens if you don't do it now, right? In an ideal world, we would have budgeted for it. We would pay the $129,000 now, not finance anything. We have the option to potentially finance it over a few years at a 4% interest rate. What if we wait and budget for it and
So
do
you
it
got
later?
a couple of risks that happen. A lot of the rebate programs are starting to term out. So we are looking at some of those disappearing, so we won't get to quite potentially. Just to give you an idea, the solar rebate that was available a year ago is no longer available at this point. So you have that potential. You also lose out on the savings for your electrical costs right off the bat. So you're not saving that energy right up front. So those are the kind of the down points. If you look at it in terms of a maintenance item, we do a lot of maintenance on the existing fluorescents. We have to pay for universal waste disposals. We won't have to do any of that because it's A, getting rid of all the initial stuff is included, and B, the LED lights don't have that same requirement. So we don't have to have hazardous waste or universal waste disposal because it doesn't exist. And you're not placing light bulbs.
How
So-
confident are you in the annual savings of 15,000?
They guarantee it. It's in writing.
How do they calculate it?
It's actually, if you look at it, they do data logging, they take all of our energy bills, they calculate it all out, they base it on average run times. And at the end of the day, if they don't meet that requirement, they pay the difference. Again, I put a covenant to that too. If we all of a sudden start using the schools 10 times more than what we're currently using them, the electricity costs go up because we're using them more, so you could have potentially
So we're
that,
not
but
gonna use
it's,
it more, because we'll probably be renting out the gym, right?
what's that?
So we will be using it more, because right now that doesn't include the new gym. And we're going to say that we're gonna use that gym in the weekend, so.
Correct. So essentially, you're guaranteed the 15,000 based on the structure of the existing systems.
Right, the gym has new lighting already
That does have
anyway.
LED.
So this is really retrofitting the rest of the elementary school, which isn't being targeted through the construction.
And the gym is sequestered enough so that it can regulate out there between the gym and the bathrooms and it will electric, yeah, and not the rest of the.
Yeah, it was designed so the back entryway in events comes through that, not through the school. And we have full lighting controls on the schools, on those, and there'll be lighting controls with this too, auto dimming and shutdown.
From my standpoint, it's kind of a no-brainer, if we've got the 129,000.
We-
I mean, no
we
reason
don't.
you wouldn't buy the car, is because you don't have the money to buy the car.
And we have to get financing.
We'd have to get
That's- We
financing.
have to okay it
Yeah.
and
We'd have
get
to finance it.
We don't have 129,000 to do it today,
Okay.
so we would be looking
So
at
that's-
some sort of loan, which is why I asked him to explain why
Yeah.
you would wanna look at financing.
So are you looking for a motion for him to start looking for the financing, or what do we? Right.
We would be authorizing Meredith to enter into an agreement
Gotcha.
to do this.
Because he hasn't found financing, so it might be right here, but it's really not here, right?
But
We
we're-
don't
we're looking
shop
for your
we wouldn't
approval.
shop the financing
Yeah.
until we know it was an approved job. Because I put out the financing to an RFP process so that they're competing against each other for the rates.
So one thing to consider in terms of, first of all, the merits of the lighting on that face makes total sense to me. I have no question about that. In terms of money, if you forego this and you say you want to try to just include it in, say, next year's operating budget, you may lose your $40,000 EverSource.
Or a portion thereof,
Yeah.
potentially. We don't know.
Well, it's true. I mean, there's a lot of those things that just phase out. Like I know I installed for instance, a wood stove years ago. I got 30%. This is federal, but things come and go like that, and so that's a risk that militates sort of in favor of doing it now and taking advantage of it. The other thing is after the first year, theoretically, you've saved $15,000, so you're up to $55,000 off the original cost, and then you can consider it another budget year whether you want to. And I suppose you could chop it up a number of ways. You could pay for half of it in a budget year and pay for half of it in the next budget year, or however you want to do it.
Because Greg, you said there was no prepayment penalty or anything.
When we go out to the RFP, we'll have things like non-appropriation clauses that have to be in there, as well as no prepay. Sorry, I can't seem to get that.
Prepayment
Prepay penalties would be part of the RFP that we would put out for the financing. And the rates have been varying because we're closing next week on the large project rate of 4.28.
I just, I feel that this is I'm living through Russ Simon. These are the questions he would
I
ask.
was thinking the same thing.
But
It's like,
if we
Russ.
wanted to go into a shop today and say, hey, install these lights for us tomorrow, what's the price? Would they say 169, or are we getting a different price through this proposal? Is it ramped up a little bit than what we get if we just walked in and?
paid cash.
Not for us, no. I mean, if, the ideal way would be to go in and pay cash for it, take the rebates, which are all ours.
His question
but-
is, I think, if, right now, we're looking at working with an energy efficiency company that's doing
Right.
some other work, is that price sort of a bundled savings because we're doing that other work, or if we were to just put this project straight out to bid?
If we
what
put
would
the
the street
project straight
value
out to
be?
bid, did the design work ourselves and put it out to bid, there'd probably be some level of savings because we're not paying for a contractor to run the project.
What I'm asking sort of indirectly is that I know people aren't in business for free, and if there's no prepayment penalty, right? Like we can just pay it off, 5 days after they install it. How are they making any money?
Well, the financing is not anything to do with the contractor installing it. The financing is through a municipal company like tax exempt financing, municipal leasing
Or a
corp,
bank.
whatever, or any bank. So we're basically, what happens is we get the financing, they do the work, we pay them. They're done other than they do annual audits because they have to ensure that the lighting is meeting the requirements.
They've
and then-
set the price, they would be the contractor.
Correct.
And that's what you're paying for.
Right.
Whereas if we did the work ourselves,
We could save some money. I can't tell you what that is without doing cost analysis.
Go through that again, so you say they're picking the contractor.
Well, they put it out to bid because Energy Efficient Investments, which is the company that we put it out to bid to local contractors to do the installation work and all of that. They're not a lighting installer. They're basically a guarantee company that says, if you do this, we're going to guarantee that this. And so they do make money on it. If we went out and did it ourselves, okay, we don't get the guarantee. So if we don't hit the mark, we don't get the guarantee. But we still get the savings. But it might be 14, it could be 16, it could be, those kind of things. So their income is based on making money running a project and the fact that they're guaranteeing a return, so they're going to make an investment on that too.
Is energy efficient investments gonna look at this if we decide to do it ourselves and say, wait a minute, if that's what you're gonna do every time we make a proposal, we're not interested in work.
I can't answer for that. I can tell you we just signed a $1.2 million on this project with them on this town side.
there's not gonna be much more for them to do here anytime soon because you've just upgraded all of your other energy
Yeah.
systems.
Okay.
Any other questions?
What would you do?
Me?
Yeah.
If I had the money, I'd just pay cash for it because I'm going to get a better return on my investment right up the front because I'm not paying almost 4% interest over the next 9 to 10 years.
Okay, but we don't have the cash now. And
So the next option would be, I would probably, if I was in your shoes, I would be asking me to take a look at if we did it ourselves, what kind of savings are, and we can still get the financing through that, if you save a percentage, 10%, whatever it happens to be, yeah, I definitely would say, look at it.
so would it be wiser to see how much it would cost if we did it ourselves?
We can.
What does that mean by ourselves? Who would do it?
I'd
We'll
manage,
bid it.
we'd manage the
Bid it
project
out.
ourselves, yeah.
So I guess we're adding more to your list, Greg. in
That's okay,
terms
that's
of
what I'm here
coming
for.
back to us, and we will defer this item to a future agenda.
And I was gonna say, I won't be able to have it for the next meeting.
The bid comes
We'll put
in
it on the
at
front of the month.
$169,000. I guess.
I'll make sure it's 168.9.
They're
Thank you.
watching our meetings.
Yes.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
That's not a problem.
Okay, Meredith.
Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Sure.
Would you like to do your superintendent report?
Sure. So you have a town report, they're out and available, if people haven't picked them up, they're at the library or town hall or the school district office. I think there's some at each school as well. our boys basketball team lost to Littleton in the semifinals, so sad end to a great season, but
Way to go, guys.
they
Good.
yes,
It
they
was a
did a
close
great
game.
job.
It's good sportsmanship, though.
Mhm.
I watched all the games. They were good.
We just met right before vacation, so there's not a ton to update you on. Our Model UN Club won the Best Small Delegation Award at their competition in Philadelphia during vacation, and I also want to recognize Taylor Kennison and Mohammed Hajiev, who won the Best Delegate Awards for their work during that time. Jason, Carrie, and I attended a cybersecurity training, and we're continuing to work on the HB 1612 data security requirements, and you'll likely see more about that moving forward over the next couple of months. Yesterday, met with our computer education folks and one of our teacher leaders with Nate Green from the Department of Ed regarding computer science education and the new standards that have come out from the state this year on that front. Robotics has their first competition next week. Monday night at 6:30 is Dessert and a Show with the chorus and band at the junior senior high. In your packet were a couple of items, including the survey, special education survey results that were conducted. Overall, we did really well. The couple of red items, which are on the last page of that stood out. Two of them speak directly to the rationale for a social worker. One, the highest value there was parents looking for resources in their community, stood out as a need, as did school offering parent training. To Erica and I, as we looked through this, it really spoke to, again, like that is part of the work of the social worker. So, our National Honor Society students helped out Lamprey Healthcare with collating some prenatal intake packets, and Lamprey Healthcare was very appreciative of that assistance. I think I mentioned it was right before vacation, so I'm not sure, but the town approved the $226,783.97 of impact fees, which will be going back into the building project account, bond account. Voting is Tuesday from 7 to 7, and the board needs to have a quorum there at 7:30 p.m. to certify the vote.
And I received my communication today in the mail.
I got mine in my mail today too.
Great. That's it.
Any school board committee reports?
Nothing really much new to report on facilities. Things are still on schedule, still on budget. There's a building committee, is it building committee?
Building committee.
Next week on Tuesday.
Following week,
Following
19th.
week on Tuesday, 5 o'clock. Progress is, good progress is made over February break and a lot of things, among other things, the new entrance, which is really nice, to the school, elementary school is installed. Still a couple more cosmetic things to do there, but looks great. I've been through it a couple times. It's much improved. Kids are enjoying the gym a lot. Good. I keep hearing positive comments on that front, so it's great. Nothing else.
Thank you, Mike. Any other committee reports?
Policy committee, I thought I had when we had questions, maybe the policy packet could go out to everybody at the same time it goes out to the committee, so that if there are questions that they want the committee to discuss, we
Good
have
idea.
those. That it's not, we discuss it and then it comes when we're okay.
Yeah, or that's sort of the rationale for first reads, is the policy
Right,
committees then
right.
presented them,
Right,
but
right. I mean, I guess when it goes out on first reading, you ask those questions here, then it's.
then the committee has another opportunity
Right,
before they
another
come back.
opportunity, and it's out in the public discussion.
Right.
Yeah, whereas if we send it out to you, you send it to us as an email, it's not heard by everybody, so.
Yeah, I think if we're good about getting the questions addressed prior to the meeting for the first read so that they can be addressed by the policy committee by the time the second read comes. We'll be in good shape. Any other committee reports? Hearing none. We had the superintendent search process began this evening at 5 p.m. We had a meeting, and we'll continue in earnest next week and moving forward. The goal is to have some candidates to the board by around the 23rd of March. So that's where that is. Many thanks to the people, everyone who volunteered, those selected and those not. We appreciate it greatly. And we hope that those who were not selected this go around will volunteer another time. So there's that. Moving on to discussion items, the first thing is the draft calendar for the 2019-2020 school year. Meredith, do you have any input or thoughts about that?
Well,
It's a calendar. It has dates.
yes, so changes over last year, and this calendar would be contingent upon approval of the teacher's contract at this stage.
Right.
It moves from 181 student days to 180, which is it's not really the state requirement anymore because the state requires hours, but it gives you some flexibility, as well as providing that additional day for teacher professional development. The Teachers Association has had access to the draft, and I met with President and Vice President of the association on Tuesday. They just asked that the board consider potentially adding additional early release days into the calendar.
And what was, did they have a reason why?
For additional time for teachers to work together on the work of the district, yeah.
Okay.
And the feedback from them also was very positive about starting after Labor Day.
And this will be on the website if any citizens have any
It is
input
on the
or
website.
thoughts.
And the hope would be to approve it potentially as early as the 21st.
Okay.
Again, waiting till after the election next
Okay.
week, vote next week.
Any questions from you guys about the calendar at this point?
I'm just looking at no school November, it doesn't seem as bad this year.
The town does not need the schools for voting on November 5th, so that was freed up. They did ask that we keep March 10th available for voting in the schools.
Just in case.
Okay. Thank you. At a meeting, 2 meetings ago or so, we talked about shared services and the finance manager position. Meredith brought some concerns about that position and the workload to the board. And what happened after that was she and I met with Steve and Dale to talk about it a little bit more. A decision was made that we should have a third-party consultant come in and take a look at the job, MRI, and the workload and all those things to come up with some concrete plans and give suggestions to us. So the plan with that is for Meredith and Steve to, we tentatively scheduled a joint school board town council meeting for April 10th at 7 p.m. so that we can all collectively be brought up to speed about the findings of that and any thoughts or plans that Steve and Meredith have at that point.
Are we sharing the cost of the consultants?
Yes, I think so. Are we? Yes. Any thoughts?
I think that's wise.
It just gives a fresh set of eyes, and I think an unbiased sort of look at what the challenges potentially are, so that we can have a real look at it, and then that data can help us determine what the best next steps are. So that's what
One
that's.
suggestion I might make is that, I can't speak for the council, but I think the school board members should receive a copy of whatever the scope of work is for MRI. So we can understand what's.
What they're looking for?
Yeah, what they're looking for, how much time is going to be, so we can really have some confidence in.
So I would say time-wise, that means we may need to look at adjusting the schedule for that April 10th meeting. Now, if that's what you're asking for, which was not the understanding Steve and I took away from the joint chairs
No,
meeting.
we did not ask for that.
If the board wants the opportunity to review that and approve it, we would try to bring that to you on the 21st. But I don't know what that would mean in terms of impact to their schedule.
Do you need
Maybe a
info?
misunderstanding. got an agreement, you're gonna enter an agreement with MRI, you're gonna define the scope of work.
They're going to assess the current finance business administrator demands and lay out some options for how to move forward.
Looking at workload and things of that nature to determine what the viability for that position is, or the suggested configurations of personnel for that. I'm not articulating myself.
So they're not getting any more direction than that, just come in, talk to people, give us suggestions as to whether the current position is structured properly, alternatives to that.
Because I think that I thought that that's what the sort of task, we were looking at that specific role to determine the best way to address that moving forward in terms of the workload and the viability of the
If the
workload.
board's fine with that, that's fine. I just think it's unusual to have a consultant contract not identifying the scope of the contract. That's.
Well, it would be, but the town administrator has not yet received it. He's had verbal conversations with MRI on 2 occasions,
Oh, it's
and
not received it yet?
I don't believe so.
Oh,
But
I don't
but
know.
again, we would need to be bringing it back to you if the board wants to approve it. It would mean we bring it to you on the 21st.
Contract. Is that what you're asking for, is the contract?
When you say Steve hasn't received yet, what is it?
A proposal from them.
That's all I'm saying is.
Yeah.
When
I-
he gets it,
The contract.
the proposal
Proposal.
from MRI, I think it should be shared with
You mean the proposal to do work or
Yeah.
the analysis?
the proposal to do work.
Right, and
What
so.
What are we agreeing to?
And so right now, you're not agreeing to it, but if you're asking for the board to agree to it, then we need to do that at a
I'm
meeting.
not asking for, I'm
Okay.
simply asking for the board to receive what you guys are gonna receive in terms of the memorandum of understanding and scope of work.
I think you're confusing two things. I think they're talking about getting a contract for the assessment, and you wanna know what the final assessment is. Is that what you're asking?
No, he wants to know what's going to be determined in the final assessment.
It's real simple. Steve hasn't received it yet.
What's it?
I want.
What's
Scope of
it?
work.
Give
Tell
us
me
the-
what it is.
The proposal from MRI has not yet been received. Verbally, that's what was agreed to. That was the understanding that existed between Steve and I and the 2 chairs. That's what we've requested. He's waiting for them to submit a written proposal.
So why is this, all I'm asking is when the written proposal, please share it with us.
I understand that. I was trying to
Not asking for it,
clarify,
so-
and that's all I was trying to clarify. Because
So-
if you wanted to approve it, we would need to do that on the 21st.
So when I receive that, or when Meredith does, she will share it with the board.
Send it out in an email.
Okay.
So, just on that, it's between the school district and the town, are they unable to understand what the job demands?
I
Those
don't-
jobs?
Is MRI unable to understand the
No,
job
no,
demands?
No, forget about MRI, just internally, I mean, have we reached a conclusion that we as a district and on the town side, in terms of this function, that we're unable to analyze it ourselves and accurately come up with, what the job entails? And that's why.
That's what the joint chairs
That's what-
determined.
Well, I mean, and I think in one hand, Meredith has said, her perspective says that this situation that exists right now is not sustainable long-term. I think she has said that.
And the person in the position has said it.
Yes. So I think that the thought was if we had a fresh set of eyes looking at the situation, one of the benefits with MRI is that they have done a whole town role assessment, long rollout. So a lot of the stuff that they might need to do now that Lisa's part of her job is in town, they've already assessed. So it's just a matter of looking at our side of the house in terms of finance manager to determine what the workload looks like.
Say that again, the town what?
The MRI came and did a full, maybe audit of every town position or a lot of them in terms of what the staffing levels for the town were, all sorts of stuff, aside from everything else, not dealing with us at all. So my thought is, since a portion of Lisa's job was investigated then, they will, they'll have to revisit it in a different way, but they have that foundational knowledge from before when those roles were in the town. So it's really just looking at, ways that those things have changed since they've come under her, as well as our piece of things. So they have a baseline of knowledge on the town already.
So that report was done when?
2 years ago?
It was
Two-
underway before I came, so.
Not have included.
That's what they're saying.
No, it would have, because the job at that point was in the town, the finance job, the job did not exist as it does now, but there was a finance person in the
A
town.
contracted.
A contracted person that was doing some of the things that Lisa now does.
A part-time person, right?
Someone. Or
No.
more than one person.
No,
It
it
was
was
just,
a
yeah, it was
part-time
part-time.
position.
What was his name?
Matt Amy.
That was part of their analysis at that time, because those reports were being rolled out to the council when I started here. It's like that September.
So now this MRA is gonna come back, so now they have the Mad Angel report. Now they're gonna come back and say, okay, now, we don't have Mad Angel, we now have Lisa. Lisa's doing this. Now, how has the town side changed? And how can we look at the school side and say, okay, how can this be more efficient? We've hired more people. What is not working here? Is it workable?
Right,
This is-
exactly.
Three of us trying to explain it.
Can we,
Yeah, we haven't hired more people, we've hired different people.
So that's what they're gonna be looking at. So when when Meredith receives the scope of work, she will share it with the board and we will proceed from then. And depending on, we'll just leave it at that. Is that amenable to everyone? Okay. Moving along, Ingrid, we're moving into the policy section for the first reads. Just like last time, there are categories of new policy, revised policy, reviewed, no changes, recommendation for deletion. Does anyone have any questions about these first reads? And like I said, moving forward, it might be good if when these are put up for the first read, if people submit questions prior to or at the
I
meeting.
think the problem is there's just so many, Kim, that it takes you all week to do it. And then, then I sit there, then I just said, like, didn't I just read that? And then, no, that was 3 weeks ago. It is becoming a little overwhelming. I didn't know if maybe there's a way we could cut it in half, maybe.
Is there a way to attach, I thought, when I went online today, I thought I could find these policies.
They're on the website.
They're part of the packet.
It was not part of my packet.
Should have been.
There's three
Mr.
three
Technology
things.
guy here. I got three PDFs.
Yes.
Yeah.
PDF, all of the policy was in the PDF?
It was in the
Yep.
second one.
Sorry.
So, I think part of it is a desire to get through
Sorry, go.
the policy as effectively as we can, since we have not really focused on it as thoroughly as we might have.
Right.
So I think once we get through this these humps, we'll be in a better position moving forward. But I will definitely.
Is the hump until the end of school year maybe, and then?
No, I don't think so. Maybe, I don't know. Well, we can abbreviate them if we would like.
Well, it's a lot for you as well.
But
I'm struggling to get through it all.
So, any questions about these first reads? I guess we'll wait for Al to find them. Al, have you had a chance to review them yet, or should we?
Can I just give some highlights? So the new policies are ones that the district did not have in place that the policy committee felt would be useful. The regulations, for example, for students riding school buses, you didn't have a set of regulations, you just had the initial guidance, so it provides a little bit more clarity of how the process works. Employee gifts and solicitations, again, there was a sentence or two in another policy, but this just makes it a little bit more clear to folks. Employment of relatives or persons with romantic personal relationships, it's really a nepotism policy essentially, but it just provides some clarity about supervision in that circumstance. Temporary alternative work is really about workers' comp. So if someone isn't able to fully return to duty, you're providing some alternatives for them and the form that goes with that. Procedures for personnel records, you didn't have any written procedures in place, so it's just trying to make that clear so that it's there for posterity. Similarly with the privacy practices, those are just procedures. You already have an existing HIPAA policy. And employee complaints and grievances, again, just spelling out procedural guidelines for those three things. Professional staff positions was an added policy. Again, you didn't have a specific policy about resignation. You had existing practices about how those have been handled, but it wasn't identified in policy. Tutoring, there's a mention of it in the employee handbook, but there was no policy per se. You didn't have a policy on coaches. Again, we've had some procedures in place. Use of the AED, this really was work done by our nurses and in consultation with our school physician. You can see there are 3 different policies. There are 3 identical policies. It used to say that only designated people could use the AED. For the last 20 years, that really hasn't been the guidance because AEDs teach you how to operate, but so our policy is now catching up to best practice. And then facilities guidelines and procedures was request of the board to update and provide some new procedural guidance. So that's one in particular that you might want to look at closely before the next meeting. The revisions, we had already dealt with AC, which is equal opportunity employment. GBA should have been done at the same time, but was missed. We just made some updates to background investigation and criminal record check, but the state after that put out a technical assistance advisory that just provides a little bit of procedural guidance. We also added a section at the recommendation of the attorney at the Department of Ed to GBCD itself. Changes to these next set, the top of your second page there, GBE, GBEA, were very minor. And again, came through school board recommendations. Staff dress code felt a little dated. I think Ingrid would say.
It was like, ooh, no jeans. We put an arbitration on that in 1978.
Yeah. So that again was really just updated to say really it's you want to look professional, but we also understand that the nature of some roles in schools is different than the nature of other roles. Social networking, again, you didn't have there were some just revisions there that were recommended by the School Board Association due to some legislative changes. We just talked about the AED. Staff complaints, concerns, and grievances, again, aligns to the procedural guidance. Staff development, employment and hiring of non-certified personnel, again, came out of School Board Association recommendations, and then buildings and facilities. And then the bulk of your policies were reviewed with no recommended changes. They're consistent with current law and School Board Association guidance and our practice. And then the 3 for deletion, staff ethics. Your updated GBEB is more comprehensive, the staff conduct with students policy. So what was included in that sort of procedural guidance has really been replaced by the policy itself. The HIV/AIDS policy was fairly obsolete in that really it's about universal precautions and bloodborne pathogens training. And then employee assistance program referenced an older program that was in place here at one time, but really that benefit is now provided through employee health insurance plan, and so it felt unnecessary at this time.
All right, any questions at this point on any of those? All right, the next thing we'll move into action items, and I seek a motion to approve the February 7th regular business and non-public meeting minutes and February 21st workshop and special business meeting minutes and non-public meeting minutes.
So moved.
We have a motion from Ms. McKinney and a second from Ms. Alberg to approve the minutes as listed. Any amendments to those minutes? Hearing none, we'll move to the vote. All those in favor of approval say aye. The next thing on the agenda is the approval of the awarding of the special education bus contract. Meredith, you can just give us a highlight on that, I would appreciate it.
So again, this was in your packet for February 7th originally. We haven't made a change to that. The recommendation is that we extend our contract with Seacoast Learning Collaborative, and we provided for you, last time's page. I think we provided for you the breakout of costs. It was by far the best available option to us for students' costs, and can't remember the other cost. Anyway, there were three that we provided for you, and this was the least expensive option, which is again part of that cooperative relationship we have with Seacoast Learning Collaborative. So that's our recommendation.
And these are buses for transportation for special ed needs.
Correct.
Just in case anybody doesn't know that there's two bus companies.
Yes.
Looking for a motion.
Yep.
Yes.
I seek a motion to approve the contract for Seacoast Learning Collaborative for special education transportation for a 2-year extension. No.
Excuse me, 3-year agreement.
Lock in the rate for 3 years with an optional 2-year extension.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Kinnison and a second from Ms. McKinney to approve this contract and agreement with Seacoast Learning Collaborative. Any questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Approved. The next thing, we have 2 donations that came in. One from the Exeter Run Club in the amount of $1,000 for the cross-country program, in the $500 for the high school cross-country program and $500 for the junior high cross-country program. And then we have $5,177.90 from Newmarket Community Education Partnerships and CEP. We're grateful as always for both of these. I seek a motion to approve and accept both of these donations. We have a motion from Mr. Zink and a second from Ms. Alberg to approve these generous donations. Thank you to both groups, yes.
May I just read through the list
Yes.
of the NCEP donations?
Yes.
So there are multiple, the ones at the elementary school, there's $800 for the LEAD program that Officer Drew was here to talk about at your last meeting. $849 for the garden club, which includes sort of rebuilding and setting out the new garden once the construction is completed there. $750 for what's called second breakfast funds, which is a recurring thing at the elementary school to feed students who might not otherwise have access to both a breakfast and snack program. $178.90 for from Rebecca Foster, our reading specialist for an animal therapy program. So the reading dog comes in, so it's to have mats there and be able to have a designated space for that. At the junior-senior high school, there's $800 for Eric Lindquist, which is really the robotics team. $1,000 for Model UN, and that was to support the costs of their recent trips, and then $800 for Mahjong games at the middle school level from Janice Murray.
Excellent. Thank you very much to the Exeter Run Club and NCEP for your generous donations.
Need to vote.
Yep. We'll move to the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Yep. Next thing is the second reading of the policies listed. Any questions about any of those?
So the vast majority of these, I will just point out, were reviewed, no changes recommended. So these are primarily your fiscal support services and facilities policies, sections D, E, and F. There were 2 recommended for deletion, and then a few that were revised, which were, those changes were highlighted in red and were part of your first readings at the last meeting.
Any questions about anything? Then we'll move to the vote on the second readings of the policies, approval of the policies listed for second reading tonight. I seek a motion to that effect.
Second.
Motion from Mr. Kennison with a second from Ms. McKinney to approve the policies as listed. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Policy is approved. Before we adjourn, just a couple reminders. The junior senior high concert is on Monday at 6:30. Dessert and a show, always a good time. The next
Voting day,
Voting day,
Tuesday,
Tuesday, 7 to 7,
right here at Newmarket
Town Hall Auditorium.
Will there be pamphlets available for people who probably just didn't look at the mailing or have questions? I mean, there's always one of us outside, so.
They're posted on the website. I believe there are some copies available at the library. I will confirm that.
I took some to the senior center.
Okay.
And if anyone has any questions, reach out. And
I also provided the senior center with an electronic copy if they wanted, if people wanted an electronic copy.
I believe we've received some questions from that, so thank you for doing that.
Good.
Meredith did a great job responding back. Building committee, March 19th at 5 p.m. in the auditorium. And then our next meeting is our workshop, which is March 21st at 7. Then our next meeting, regular business meeting, is April 4th at 7 p.m. And right now, the joint town council school board meeting is scheduled for April 10th at 7 p.m. I seek a motion to adjourn the meeting at 8:34 p.m.
So,
I have a motion from Mr. Zink and a second from Mr. Kinnison to adjourn the meeting. All those in favor? Oh, we didn't do the manifest, did we? I'm going to table that motion to adjourn and approve the manifests.
I'm gonna make a motion to approve the manifest dated March 2019, with a total amount of $402,642.63.
I need a second.
Oh, sorry, that's not sleeping.
Can you push this down to Jen?
Jen.
We have a motion for Mr. Kinnison and a second from Ms. McKinney to approve the manifests as read. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Now I will seek a motion to adjourn the meeting at 8:35.
You tabled it, so you
Oh,
have
tabled,
it.
I'll bring it back up. Yes, I did. We have our motion that was tabled before is reinstated. All those in favor of adjourning say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.